Tonight, Trump versus the WTO, getting Scots to sober up, and when street names get political.
To me, it's almost become rote. Okay, we're gonna honor Martin Luther King. Let's name a street.
One of the highest-ranking officials in the Catholic Church is going on trial for sexual abuse. A judge in Melbourne ruled today that some of the pre-trial testimonies against Cardinal George Pell, which included allegations that he groped and assaulted minors, seem credible enough to go in front of a jury. Pell has pleaded not guilty. Armenian opposition leader Nikol Pashinyan is urging his supporters to go on strike tomorrow, after the country's ruling party blocked him from taking over as interim prime minister. Pashinyan led the mass protests that forced the former prime minister, who used to be president, to step down last week. A father whose daughter was killed in February's Parkland massacre is suing Stoneman Douglas High School's armed resource officer. Andrew Pollock filed a wrongful death lawsuit against several people, but singled out Scott Peterson on social media. Pollock says he doesn't want money, just to expose the officer as a coward. Security cam footage shows Peterson was outside while the shooting happened. Peterson's lawyer has said his actions were appropriate under the circumstances. 17 states and Washington, D.C. are suing the Environmental Protection Agency to try to stop it from rolling back Obama-era vehicle emission standards, under EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt.
This is about health, it's about life and death, and this character in Washington with his expensive travel tastes and his funny little redecorating plans that cost the American people all sorts of money is riding roughshod over the laws of this country.
Tens of thousands of people in cities across the world marched for better rights for workers today. In some places, demonstrators went off message and got violent. Masked protesters in Paris smashed windows and set a car on fire. In Manila, people demanding an end to the drug war burned an effigy of President Duterte. And in eastern Germany, hundreds of neo-Nazis faced off with anti-right-wing protesters. On Monday, President Trump extended exemptions for tariffs on steel and aluminum that were set to expire at midnight. Keeping the exemptions in place holds a trade war at bay, at least for another month. The tariffs, when and if they do kick in, are meant to decrease the amount of steel and aluminum that other countries send to the U.S., which in theory could help the American steel industry grow. But imposing the tariffs in the first place is already having a different effect.
President Trump makes a lot of bombastic claims about what other countries do to the United States when it comes to trade.
They dump massive amounts of product in our country, and it just kills, it destroys our companies and our jobs.
But the news here isn't what they're doing. It's what Trump is doing, completely rejecting the free trade policies embraced by every American president since World War II. You don't have to take my word for it. Today, the U.S. Secretary of Commerce Wilbur Ross called the World Trade Organization obsolete. That's about as big as statements get when it comes to trade. The U.S. was the leading force in creating the WTO back in 1995. And until Trump was elected, the U.S. had been the WTO's greatest champion. It's basically a superpowered United Nations, but for trade. Countries send representatives who meet at WTO HQ in Geneva. All WTO policy decisions are made by consensus. So like the UN, it takes forever to do anything. But unlike the UN, it can actually take steps to enforce its rulings.
If you lose in one of these cases, what you're supposed to do is stop doing the offending thing. Remove the tariff that is illegal. If you refuse to do that, you've got another choice, which is to pay the winner, pay compensation.
William Reinsch has been on the free trade side of things for decades. He worked in Congress for Republicans and for Democrats. He worked in the Clinton administration. He ran a trade association. He's your classic DC free trader. And under the world that guys like Reinsch understand, Trump's tariff gambit plays out just one way.
We live in a globalized economy now. Everything is made everywhere. Example, one of these, okay? This is technically, under customs rules, this is a product of China, okay? Because it was put together in China. All the ingredients come from, I think, something like 13 different countries. And one of the things we might do is put tariffs on these coming in. But more than 60% of the value of this phone is Apple's intellectual property. So the victim here is going to be our own company, more than it is going to be the Chinese. But that's the way the world works these days. You know, it's all tangled up.
President George W. Bush tried to impose his own steel tariffs back in 2002.
And therefore provide temporary relief so that the industry could restructure itself. That's exactly what the World Trade Organization allows for.
When the WTO rejected them, Bush canceled them, before the U.S. was required to pay any compensation. Everyone expects the WTO to rule the same way on Trump's tariffs. But no one knows what this president will do after the WTO says no. Maybe he'll just scrap the whole arrangement and try to abandon the WTO, and with it, all the trade policies that have governed how the U.S. sees the world for decades.
What will happen is the world will go on without us. You know, I mean, I think he has this idea that we're indispensable. Life will go on for everybody else, and will be in the process of steadily marginalizing ourselves.
Kansas City, Missouri is one of the most segregated cities in America. It's also one of only a handful of major cities that doesn't have a street named for Martin Luther King Jr. Now, Kansas City wants to do something about that. But there's a catch. People can't agree about where a new MLK Boulevard should go. On the mostly black east side of town, the mostly white west side, or somewhere in between.
Paseo begins to wind north-northwest and picks up as a straight thoroughfare at 63rd Street.
Reverend Vernon Howard is the president of the local Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the same organization Martin Luther King Jr. helped found.
One of the things unique to Paseo is you have this very wide thoroughfare. With all of the grass, there's opportunities for new monument, for beautification.
Last October, Howard and several of the local clergy submitted a proposal to the city to take the Paseo, a historic boulevard on the black side of town, and rename it Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard.
The renaming of Paseo after Dr. King does have social and racial integration impact, but it also has even deeper economic impact.
But in March, officials denied the request to rename the Paseo. So the clergy group started lobbying the city council. Then they staged a rally. And they're now gathering signatures to put the issue on the ballot in August.
Is it best served to be on the black side of town?
The naming of the street should be an inspiration and an invitation that it would be a place where all Kansas Cityans gather. And what's wrong with that locale being in a prominently black area?
For some people, there is something wrong with that. In most cities, MLK Boulevards are in black neighborhoods. But that brings some baggage. More often than not, they're so run down that it's not just a stereotype, it's a punchline.
Martin Luther King stood for nonviolence. Now what's Martin Luther King? A street. And I don't give a fuck where you in America. If you're on Martin Luther King Boulevard, there's some violence going down. It ain't the safest place to be.
One of the arguments that I've heard for putting Martin Luther King Jr. Street on the Paseo is that it would attract investment, it would attract economic opportunity.
Okay. And the evidence of that is what? Show me an area of this country where renaming the street Martin Luther King Boulevard has increased the economic activity on that street and in that area. There's no facts to support that. Every city does a street. To me, it's almost become rote. Okay, we're gonna honor Martin Luther King. Let's name a street. But I do think that it's worthy of a community conversation. And that should include all sorts of different people.
And now, everyone's talking about where the MLK Boulevard should go and where it shouldn't go.
Do you think it would be as easy to put a Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard on the White Side?
No.
Why is that?
Because I think there's a lot of prejudice.
In that sense, it almost seems like they need it more.
Exactly, it does. It almost seems like they need it more because they need to have their minds open. They need to realize that we do need to be one group.
I don't know who benefits more. Maybe the African American community needs it more, but I think the white community will benefit more.
And I have heard some people say, okay, why are we keeping this street on this side? Shouldn't it be cutting across, or should it be on the White Side too?
I don't really think that should be a factor, because when you go there, you're missing the point. Where every section be on the west side, east side. My thing is we should just have one.
Who needs that symbol of Dr. King the most?
All of us do.
You think so?
All of us do.
So then why do we put it in the black neighborhood? Why do we not have it cut across the black to the white neighborhood?
He was a black minister. He served in a black church. He fought for the freedom and justice of black people.
I think the black side of town will always have Dr. King's legacy in mind. My concern is that we don't create an artificial dividing line. I think that in some people's minds, if you name a street that's 9.5 miles long, Dr. Martin Luther King, and it sits in a vastly majority black community, that it simply becomes another dividing line.
It sounds like you want people to be a little bit uncomfortable in this conversation.
Tell me about a racial conversation where somebody isn't uncomfortable.
Today, Scotland raised prices on alcohol. It's the first country in the world to impose what's called minimum unit pricing.
That will be changing. That's going up to $18.50 from $14.99.
Last year, more than 1,200 Scots died because of alcohol. And more than a quarter of people drink at hazardous levels. The goal of the new law is to use economic pressure to get them to stop.
I'd probably say Friday night, Saturday night, a lot of the jobs are alcohol related, but then it doesn't necessarily have to be a Friday night. It could be a Monday afternoon or Saturday afternoon. So that's a job in just now for us. A job related to alcohol, it says an intoxicated male fallen with a head injury. Hello.
What's you had to drink tonight? A wee drink? I've had quite a lot, you know. So what were you drinking tonight, do you know?
Frosty Jack.
Frosty Jack. Cider.
Frosty Jack's is a brand of white cider with a high alcohol content, 7.5%. And it's cheap, only $5.20 for a 3-litre bottle. But under the new law, the same bottle will cost 3 times as much. The new pricing system is designed to hit cheap, high-proof ciders and beers the hardest, operating on the theory that those drinks are what fuel alcoholism in struggling communities.
That's all right, mate. It's all right. Well, see, because you've banged your head and you can't really remember much and you're a bit intoxicated, you know, or if you take you up to the hospital, all right, mate. Aye, good.
Hospitals are struggling too. Alcohol-related incidents cost the Scottish Health Service $370 million a year.
So how typical is that?
That's a typical job for me.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
So with one call, alcohol-related, you've had you guys go out to him, the police have been involved, he's now at the hospital, a doctor's going to see him. That's a lot of resources.
Of course it is. It's a lot of time and a lot of resources.
And do you expect any more of these tonight?
Yeah, absolutely.
But even the steady stream of ambulance pickups hasn't convinced skeptics that changing pricing will actually work.
It's very simplistic to say, well, these people are disproportionately drinking very strong beers and ciders, therefore if we get rid of the strong beers and ciders, they won't get drunk and their problems will be solved.
Well, that's not what they're saying, are they? They're just saying that more lives will be saved. They're not saying that all alcoholics are going to stop drinking.
But they're suggesting that some of them will significantly cut down their rate of consumption. And I think that's just a basic, simplistic fallacy.
Of course, that's not what the proponents think. And while they acknowledge that minimum unit pricing may not do much to discourage long-term alcoholics, it could go some way to stopping the next wave of problem drinkers.
What would you say to those people who say that this is a tax on the poor?
Well, there's no evidence for that. So interestingly, when you look at the modelling, the harmful drinkers in poorest communities actually save money under minimum unit pricing because they change their behaviour. And it's not just those who've got a problem at the moment that we're trying to address with this policy. We're trying to stop other people from developing a problem in the first place.
It's got loud, hasn't it?
It's outside a nightclub, the lunch lines, you know.
Oh, right.
Prepare for grief. All right, pal, how you doing? What have you been drinking? It kind of gets to the stage you can't be bothered doing this job anymore sometimes, you know. What happened to you then?
Ow, fuck me, man, I got spiked.
You got spiked, and you've taken something.
You've had an old homeless guy and then a really young kid. So it's just across the board.
I know, a wide variety of people, innit? You know.
Other governments might soon be following Scotland's lead. Ireland has already passed a bill to introduce minimum unit pricing, and England says it's waiting to see how effective the Scottish policy will be.
Do you think if alcohol was a bit more expensive, it might stop people getting so intoxicated?
Maybe the occasional drinker, they might think twice because it might be too expensive, but your seasoned drinkers, they'll probably just keep buying it. But
just not eat.
Just not eat. You know?
Not heat the house.
They'll put their heating on. They'll make a sacrifice somewhere else.
Aaron Traywick, the CEO of the biohacking company Ascendance Biomedical, which Vice News profiled last month, was found dead Sunday floating in a sensory deprivation tank in a meditation spa in Washington, D.C. Police are investigating, but don't suspect foul play. Traywick and his company developed experimental gene therapies that people tested on themselves, without approval from the FDA. Traywick himself once injected what he said might be a cure for herpes into his own thigh in front of a live audience at a conference. He also helped others experiment on themselves. One of those people was Tristan Roberts, who self-injected an experimental gene therapy for HIV on a live stream with Traywick sitting next to him.
Aaron was a divisive figure in the biohacking community, but it seems like his passing has been bringing people together.
You know, let's say that your friend is testifying in Congress. For example, some of my friends actually did this. Let's not do that again anytime soon.
Last month, Mark Zuckerberg did testify before Congress, and he got grilled by slightly uninformed but well-intentioned senators and congressmen. Zuck promised that he would make changes to fix Facebook, and today at Facebook's annual developer conference, he tried to tell people that Facebook actually does some good for the world.
Just since the last F8, we've seen the Me Too movement and the March for Our Lives organized at least part on Facebook.
And that he's imposing consequences on bad behavior.
We're currently in the process of investigating every single app that had access to a large amount of people's information before we made these big changes in 2014. And if we find anything suspicious, we're going to bring in independent auditors to do a full audit, and if any data was misused, then we'll ban that developer, and we will tell anyone whose data was affected.
Facebook has already begun cracking down on these developers, who for years had been working in concert with the company. We spoke to one of the first developers who got kicked off the platform last month in this new era of accountability.
Obviously, what he wanted to do was to divert the public attention elsewhere, and we were somehow caught in the middle.
Federico True is the CEO of CubeU, a market research company that collected Facebook data to create reports for advertisers.
They have no problem in just throwing a full business that invested millions in them over the years and just throw it under the bus because, I know, at that moment it's convenient.
CubeView said it never sold users' data, and that its business model is similar to other companies on Facebook's platform, and that Facebook certified them as a preferred developer. But Facebook says CubeView violated their developer policy, reportedly selling user data to marketers, and that Facebook has suspended the company pending an investigation.
Facebook was a good partner for us. The relation just turned very sour for, I would say, no reason, just because of the political pressure. I mean, I'm not really looking forward to work much with Facebook after what happened in the future, but I would like to see them changing their position 180 degrees.
Other developers I spoke to found that their access to the Facebook platform has been depreciated or cut off entirely. As one developer told me this morning, Facebook closing off its platform is good for Facebook. Facebook can avoid scandals from rogue developers and keep users on their apps, not third parties. That could encourage Facebook to keep doing something it's already famous for, ripping features from other apps. Just ask Snapchat. And that means we may be moving towards a world where Facebook has even more control over the apps and services we use.
That is fire. It don't sound like the strip clubs I would go to.
It'll only be a couple hours, and I'm about to leave. Do you got plans tonight? I'm a couple 100 miles from Japan, and
It's groovy, smooth. He gives me like a Bruno Mars type feel. He sounds like he's rich. I just come to your hotel a few hours from Japan or a few miles. I've been there. I love Japan. It was lit. Like, we got drunk, did some things we were supposed to do. They appreciate hip hop out there, like, a lot. They just respect everything. You know what I mean? It's like nothing like out here. This is not my thing, you know what I mean? It sounds like a good song for a man getting ready to go to work for the day. You know, get up, shave his beard, clean up nice, put his suit and tie on, get some coffee, or some toast, get his newspaper, and head off to work.
Just wanna put some more quality in our time. Come on, girl. Don't make me wait. Don't make me wait. True love.
Yo, Shaggy still sounds exactly the same, yo. That's crazy. Well, you gotta understand, like, Caribbean music, they have their own sound, like their own type of tempo that they use in the Caribbean culture. You know what I mean? You rock back and forth. It's that type of feel. It always feels good. It feels tropical. It always feels like you're on the island. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just me and you. Yeah, it's just me and you.
Ooh, you get sturdy to this. I heard of Willie Nelson, of course. I mean, yeah, like in movies, you hear him. I hear him a lot. Never like personally listen to him. Willie Nelson just made me sturdy. I'm gonna have to put Willie Nelson in a record now. Yo, Willie Nelson. Listen, I'm from Brooklyn. You understand what I'm saying? You got me sturdy. You understand like what that does for Brooklyn people? We gotta collab. We gotta bring it together, man. Make it a hit.
That's Vice News Tonight for Tuesday, May 1st.